Hello and welcome to my show, Shuvra Deb with you, with me, your host, Shuvra Deb. In this show, I will be discussing mental health with the aim of raising mental health awareness in our community and in society as a whole. The genesis of the show is my own pivotal life-changing experience of being in a Category 5 hurricane back in 2017. That experience led me to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. I am hosting this show in order to let you know that you are not alone if something life-changing has happened to you from which you are struggling to heal. Shuvra Deb with you focuses on a range of topics relevant to mental health and to raising awareness of issues surrounding mental health. Hello everyone and welcome back to my show, Shuvra Deb with you. I am live here in the studio as you listen, and I have to say I love being live in here. For those of you who have not been into a recording studio, I really love the quiet and the peace of the studio. Everything's just so well soundproof that you start to feel just really kind of chilled and relaxed just by being here. And the reason I'm telling you all about that is that the feeling of being chilled and relaxed is relevant for today's show. Today, I'm going to talk to you about stress management. I'm going to discuss how standing still is sometimes what we need to do in order to move forward. Now, for those of you who tuned in for my show last week, you will know that the intention behind my show, Shuvra Deb with you, is to highlight the importance of mental health and the importance of mental health awareness. I bet that most of you listening take the time to attend to your physical health in one way or another, whether that's by going to the gym or the yoga studio or following a healthy diet or getting out there in nature or going for beach walks. But how many of us really care for our mental health? I'd take a guess and say that we as a society are much more focused on our physical health than we are on our mental health. And I am trying to do my bit to change that just a little so that focusing on mental health becomes acceptable in a way that perhaps it isn't at the moment in society. Before I jump into today's topic, I would like to briefly touch on what we discussed last week. For those of you who haven't had the chance yet to tune in and listen to that show yet, I am in the stages of finalising my podcast. And I will have that set up soon where you'll be able to access all of my shows and have a listen on demand, and I'll keep you updated on that. Last week, I dived in deep into the topic of trauma and what it was like for me to be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. I came to suffer from PTSD as a result of a life-changing event of experiencing a Category 5 hurricane in the British Virgin Islands 5 years ago, in 2017. Before I go into that though, this show is about mental health and raising awareness surrounding the topic of mental health. However, I do want to make it clear at the very outset that I'm not a medical doctor and I'm not medically qualified, so nothing I say should be taken as medical or other professional advice. I also want to say at the outset that if anyone listening to this show is experiencing feelings of distress, overwhelm, anxiety, or the need to talk to someone, then you need to seek professional help. If someone is feeling suicidal, they need to get to the Accident and Emergency Department at Georgetown Hospital. If someone needs a person to talk to or some guidance on how to deal with symptoms and feelings that are making you feel distressed, there are so many options here in the Cayman Islands. Infinite Mind Care can be reached on 926-0882. The Alex Panton Foundation offers clinical support to service providers on island. For people up to the age of 30, the foundation offers financial assistance if someone is unable financially to afford therapy or other treatments relating to mental health. All that information is on their website, which is alexpantonfoundation.ky. Loud Silent Voices also provides mental health support, and their number is 922-3847, and their email is info@lsv.support. One of the things I discussed last week was how the experience of suffering from PTSD left me feeling like I was no longer myself. It was as if I wasn't me anymore. I felt alien inside my own body and inside my own mind, and that gave rise to feelings of isolation. Those feelings of isolation arose largely from not being able to relate to people who hadn't themselves experienced the hurricane that I had been through. I felt I needed to be surrounded by the people who had also been through that same trauma. And when, as a result of circumstance, I was no longer able to surround myself with those people, my isolation from normal life, from other people, became even greater, whatever normal life even means. That isolation became very, very consuming. I would have one public face, a mask, and then I would be me behind closed doors, whoever me was at that stage. One of the other things I touched on in my show last week is how PTSD sufferers dissociate from their bodies when they have suffered trauma and are suffering from PTSD. Looking back on it, I think that for me, the feeling of isolation that I had was one form of dissociation from my body. By feeling like I was no longer myself, I was dissociating from my body. I also touched last week on the fact that one of the best ways of treating PTSD is to come back to the body. The work of the renowned physician and author Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a leading trauma expert, is discussed in a recent article by Chris Hedges on realnews.com. The article speaks of Dr. Mate's new book, The Myth of Normal: Trauma, Illness and Healing in a Toxic Culture. I haven't read Dr. Mate's book yet, but it is definitely on the top of my current reading list. That article says, in a society where profit and personal attainment are the highest values, traumas abound, and every day people are left to endure their pain and shame in silence. The consequence of this dark ethic, Dr. Mate illustrates, plays out on our bodies, severely damaging our psyches and pushing us towards individual and social self-annihilation. With that in mind, the topic today is to do with stress management, and I think this is a really important topic, given that the experience of a traumatic event and the experience of the individual and social self-annihilation, about which the article on Dr. Mate's book speaks, both have the capacity to have the same debilitating effects on our mental and physical health. Stress is something that we therefore all need to pay attention to. Whether that's workplace stress, or stress from running your home and your household, or any other general day-to-day stress, which I think is something that we can all relate to in one way or another. One of the most repeated phrases I hear people say is, I don't have time, or I don't have enough time, or I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time to spend with my family. I wish I had more time to relax. I wish I had time to meditate. Well, I'm going to show you that a relatively small amount of daily time dedicated to a practice can really help you to approach life in a different way, allowing you to have a bit more time. So how do we do this? You may have come across the 15-minute rule. There are different 15-minute rules, but the 15-minute rule that I want to talk to you about is this one. By giving 15 minutes a day to something every day, you create a new practice, and a new practice eventually becomes a new habit. A study undertaken by University College London found it takes roughly, on average, 66 days to form a new habit. That's roughly 2 months. And that figure is within a range. According to the study, some people are able to form a habit in just 18 days, which is less than 3 weeks. So, what can you achieve in 15 minutes? If you're looking for a way to de-stress and you feel you don't have the time to get your gym kit on, get in the car, head to the gym or the yoga studio or wherever for an hour each day, then I suggest that you start with something smaller. Start by giving yourself just 15 minutes. Find a 15-minute yoga practice on YouTube and follow it in the comfort of your own home without having to travel anywhere, without having to give over a whole hour or so to a practice. Equally, if you're keen to try a meditation, again, go on YouTube, search for even a 5-minute meditation, a 10-minute meditation, or a 15-minute meditation. Sit down on a comfortable chair with a straight spine, close your eyes and listen to the guided words. And if guided words are not your thing, Go on Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon Music and type in meditation music, and a whole load of fantastic pieces of music will pop up. Hit play, sit or lie down and relax. Close your eyes if that's helpful to you. And then, as you're there relaxing, see, sense or feel yourself settling into your favourite place in nature, whether that's the beach, a forest, by a lake, or in the mountains. And just rest there for your 15 minutes. Rest there by feeling into the place that you have chosen. If it's the forest, what kind of trees are around you? Are there butterflies fluttering by? Do you hear birds singing? Can you feel the warmth of the sunshine gently warming your arms and your legs? Can you feel the breeze as it gently passes and blows by? And whilst you are doing this, focus in on your breath, filling your belly with long, deep breaths on the in-breath and slowly releasing that breath on the out-breath. And if you're truly, really struggling to make time for a relaxation practice in your day, and I know how that feels when the pressures of work and family life are so much that you feel you don't even have time to get all of those things done, when that happens, just try again the next day. It's really important not to beat yourself up or be down on yourself if you miss a day of the practice that you've chosen. Just start again the next day. But back to the 15-minute rule. The mind has memory in the same way the muscles in your body have muscle memory. If you do a task or enter into a practice repeatedly, the mechanics of that task or practice will start to become solidified in your mind, in your memory. Take driving a car, for example. People who drive may relate to how alien it felt when you first got in the car and started to drive, especially if, like me, you had to learn how to drive using a manual car, a stick, rather than an automatic car. However, you found that the more you did it, the more it became like second nature. Soon you found you didn't even have to repeat mirror signal maneuver to yourself in your head before you undertook a maneuver. You just started to do it. MSM, mirror signal maneuver, became a part of your unconscious practice when driving. In the same way, if you teach your mind to be still, to be as quiet as it can be, even if it's just for 15 minutes a day, at least to begin with, you will find that that sense of calm, quiet, and peace starts to filter into other aspects of your life. By training your mind to be still, you are making space for those moments of silence, those moments which are the gaps between your thoughts, the gaps in the internal reel of mind chatter. And the more we practice stillness, the more our internal mind chatter starts to slow down, until we start to find enjoyment and peace in those gaps between our thoughts. And in time, those gaps between our thoughts become longer gaps, providing for yet more stillness and peace. Eckhart Tolle says, "When you become conscious of these brief spaces as they happen naturally, they will lengthen, and as they do, you will experience with increasing frequency the joy of perceiving with little or no interference of thinking." And slowly, slowly, those gaps, those moments in time where you are just you and you are not your thoughts, those gaps will be what allows you to be more present. And by being present, we sense a calmness, a stillness, during which moments it is difficult to feel stressed about things. I think of it in this way. If you were to imagine your physical body floating in space, held in air effortlessly, slipping into those gaps between our thoughts is the equivalent of that stillness, but for our minds. In those moments, our minds are suspended in space, just relaxing, just being, just existing. And that is a feeling of true harmony. Archimedes famously had his eureka moment whilst taking a bath. In the act of taking a regular bath, Archimedes was so inspired that he worked out the scientific principles behind what makes an object sink or float. His findings are still used in shipbuilding and water travel today. Isaac Newton was famously sitting under a tree when he saw a falling apple hit the ground. From this, he was inspired to name and explain the principles of what makes gravity what it is. So how does all of this apply to you? You don't have to be looking for your eureka moment in order to benefit from letting go, from just being and from stillness. By slowing down, stilling your mind and your body activity, and just taking time to breathe, you start to change the pace at which you do things. You start to change the way in which you react to things. This is because you are changing and reprogramming your nervous system and how it reacts to events outside of you, how it reacts to events that are outside of your control. By being still and pausing, we are reprogramming our parasympathetic nervous system, or our PNS. Cindy Dale, in her book Energy Healing for Trauma, Stress and Chronic Illness, describes the PNS as the calming and de-escalating part of our nervous system. The PNS works with the sympathetic nervous system, or the SNS. The SNS is the part of the nervous system that is the excitatory and activating part. Cindy Dale goes on to say, when prompted, the SNS immediately triggers the production of excitatory hormones, chiefly adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. This initial hormonal blast-off is called the stress response and triggers the flight, freeze, fight, and fawn reactions. Now, I talked about the fight or flight response on my last show. I talked about it in the context of experiencing a life-changing traumatic event and what happens to the brain and body whilst the trauma event is ongoing, and also what happens to the body and mind after the actual event has passed. However, activation of the fight or flight response is not just restricted to trauma events. Cindy Dale puts it really well. She says, the nervous system's stress response can be triggered from an external event, but it can also arise because of internal circumstances, such as an upset stomach or, and this is key, a nagging thought. That response, that brain reaction of fight or flight also kicks in when we are stressed. When we are experiencing stress, the body releases the cortisol hormone. The effect of this is that it puts us on high alert. Being on high alert enables us to deal with the oncoming stress event, whether that's a job interview, a difficult conversation with our spouse or child, or whether it's someone shouting at us. The Mayo Clinic, one of the leading healthcare facilities in the US, sets out the other effects of cortisol on our bodies once it's released into the bloodstream. The Mayo Clinic states, cortisol, the primary stress hormone, increases sugars, glucose, in the bloodstream. Cortisol also curbs functions that would be non-essential or harmful in a fight or flight situation. For example, a non-essential function when in fight or flight mode is hunger. When our bodies are undergoing a stressful event or situation, or there are thoughts swarming in our minds giving rise to feelings of stress, there is cortisol coursing through our bodies. And if this is happening, say at or just before a mealtime, we may not feel hungry. We may therefore not eat lunch. We may not eat dinner. We may even be telling ourselves that we do not have the time to eat lunch or to eat dinner, that we're too busy dealing with whatever it is that's stressing us out. Any nutritionist, doctor, or physical health expert will tell us that skipping and missing meals is very bad. But not only that, when we're experiencing stress and the body is releasing cortisol, the Mayo Clinic goes on to state that this response also alters immune system responses and suppresses the digestive system, the reproductive system, and growth processes. This complex natural alarm system also communicates with the brain regions that control mood, motivation, and fear. As happens in a trauma situation where there is an external event that acts as the stressor, the same thing happens in our bodies in a non-trauma event situation when that event is one that gives rise to stress. That is, the body goes into fight or flight, releases cortisol, and makes us ready to deal with the stressor. Once that stressing event is over, what should happen is this. Cindy Dale says, once the crisis is over, the body returns, or is supposed to return, to the pre-emergency relaxed state via marching orders from the parasympathetic nervous system. However, long-term and intermittent stress or really acute problems stop the PNS from kicking in. So, you have the SNS that gears you up to deal with the stress. Then you have the PNS and that calms you back down. But in PTSD sufferers and in people suffering chronic stress, the PNS ceases to function well. Therefore, the part of the nervous system, the function of which is to re-stabilize the body after a stressful event, ceases to do its job in extreme or chronic situations. This means that the parasympathetic nervous system starts to lose its ability to bring the body back down from that high awareness state, from that stress response. What this can then give rise to in sufferers of chronic stress is a number of possible body and mind reactions, including anxiety, depression, headaches, problems with the digestive system, and problems related with sleep. Being able to regulate the parasympathetic nervous system manages stress. If the regulation of the PNS is working well, the risk of other health problems will be reduced, and we will generally have a better sense of well-being, both physically and mentally. So, why is this business of standing still to move forward beneficial to you? And why would you waste your time in your already time-hungry life to focus on meditating or on journaling or on yoga practice or whatever it is that you might choose? By slowing down, it doesn't mean that you, turn into a lump of mashed potato or something. Quite the opposite. By slowing down, not only do we allow improvements to manifest in our PNS and our overall health and sense of well-being, we also put ourselves in a position of great strength. We can be in a position that where, even if we receive bad news, or if we are put under a sudden deadline at work, we are much less likely to react with a panic reaction. We are much less likely to feel that quickening heartbeat or that lightheadedness or that dry throat. We are much more likely to bend and flow with the ups and downs of life. And here are 3 further reasons why following the 15-minute rule and having a daily practice is a good thing. Number 1, your health. I was told a story recently by a friend who had been told this by a doctor he knows. The doctor described how the body and mind's capacity to tolerate life and our reactions to life's events is like an elastic or a rubber band. The band extends and it extends, and it stretches and it stretches. It takes on piles and piles of pressure from years of stress, from years of work, from years of paying bills, from years of the general worries of life and so on. And then one day, with no warning whatsoever, the elastic or the rubber band can snap, just like that. You hear of people, you may even know someone to whom this has sadly happened, where people seemingly out of nowhere have a mental breakdown. They just snap and start doing something really out of character. Or the same symptom can manifest physically. Someone seems fine and suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, they have a health issue or illness. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that any of us will have this happen to us within the next 5 minutes or tomorrow or next week or whenever, that something awful is going to happen to us. What I am suggesting is that we are all at risk of these health issues as consequences of not taking care of ourselves, of not slowing down. The second reason for slowing down and how that's relevant for you, for all of us, is our mental health and cognitive function. In the short term, stress has the capacity to affect the brain's cognitive abilities. The Harvard Medical School reports, scientists have seen changes in how the brain processes information when people experience either real-life stress or stress manufactured in a research setting. The Harvard Medical School's report cites research undertaken by Dr. Kerry Resler, Chief Scientific Officer at McLean Hospital and Professor of Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Resler states that either type of stress, whether it's a real-life experience or manufactured under research settings, seems to interfere with cognition, attention, and memory. Dr. Resler goes on to say, for example, if you're in a dangerous or emotionally taxing situation, the amygdala, the part of your brain that governs your survival instincts, may take over, leaving the parts of your brain that help to store memories and perform higher-order tasks with less energy and ability to get their own jobs done. The basic idea is that the brain is shunting its resources because it's in survival mode, not memory mode. The article says, this is why you might be more forgetful when you're under stress, or may even experience memory lapses during traumatic events. The third reason to take a step back and not allow stress to take over? Life is too short. Life is too short to be stressed. Mel Robbins, the famous lawyer, television host, podcaster, author, and motivational speaker, gave a TEDx talk. In that talk, she said that scientists had estimated that the probability of a person being born is 1 in 400 trillion. Dr. Ali Binzer wrote an article about this finding in HuffPost. Dr. Binzer says, "So what's the probability of your being born? It's the probability of 2.5 million people getting together, each to play a game of dice with trillion-sided dice. They each roll the dice, and they all come up with the exact same number." This all tells us that in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of life, our individual existence is a miracle. And in my view, life is way too short not to revel in that miracle. Life is too short to allow ourselves to become stressed by life. The miracle of any of us being in existence, of having the life that we have, for me, means that each and every one of our lives are way too special and precious to spend that time stressing. By slowing down, your mind and body start to realize that the old way of rush, rush, rush actually gets you nowhere. What that way does do for you is that it agitates you, makes you stressed, and gives you less enjoyment from your life. Now, if someone offered you a pill that guaranteed lowered stress levels, less frustration, and more time in your life to do things that you want to do, chances are you would take that pill. You might even be prepared to pay a lot of money for the pill if it came with all of those guarantees and then delivered on them. The good news is that you don't need that pill. Even if it existed, you don't need it. And achieving a state of calm stillness is not going to cost you money. It's free. So, let's try a practice together. Please only do this if you're not driving as you're listening to this show. Take 5 minutes with me here now. Lie or sit down in a comfortable spot and allow yourself to have a straight spine. As you sit or lie down, start to feel the contact of your body against the chair or mat or bed or wherever you are right now. As you start to feel your body and your contact against where you are, start settling into your breath, bringing your focus to your breath. Feel your breath entering through your nostrils or mouth, and feel the exhale again through your nostrils or through your mouth. Closing your eyes if you haven't done so already. Let's together take a deep, relaxing breath in through your nose and gently out through your mouth. Now let's together take another deep, reviving breath in through your nose and gently out through your mouth. Let's together take a third deep, de-stressing breath in through your nose and gently out through your mouth. As you settle into this practice, start to notice your breath. Is your in-breath going deep into your belly? Send your in-breath deep into your belly. And on the out-breath, feel yourself relaxing and releasing any stress or tension that you might have. On the in-breath, send your breath deep into your belly. And on the out-breath, feel yourself relaxing and releasing any stress or tension. Focus here on this breath practice for 1 minute with the music on, and I will watch the time for you. As you deepen into the practice, on your next in-breath, see, sense or feel a ball of golden light filling your belly. And on the out-breath, release any stress or tension, anything that is no longer serving you. Release that out of your body. On your next in-breath, see, sense or feel a ball of golden light filling your belly. And on the out-breath, release any stress or tension, things that are no longer serving you. Stay with this practice for 1 more minute and I will watch the time for you. Now, start to let the practice dissolve. Start to feel the contact of your body again against your chair or mat or bed, wherever it is that you are resting. And slowly, gently, open your eyes. So, how do you feel? I hope you feel a bit more relaxed than you did 5 minutes ago, and I hope you feel good. I hope you feel really, really good. Going back to the 15-minute rule, it goes a lot further than just lowering your stress levels. It can be more than creating good habits that might include a new yoga or a meditation practice. By also giving yourself 15 minutes a day to a project you're working on, you start the project and you complete the project. And this applies to me. For most of my shows, I didn't come up with the ideas for them by sitting for hours and days on end at my computer brainstorming ideas and then putting them down on paper. On the contrary, often I'm out on a 20-minute beach walk and it's there that a lot of my inspiration comes. Or I will sit on my mat for a 15-minute meditation and it's on my mat that even more inspiration comes. And in terms of creating and finishing projects, this is the most exciting bit about the 15-minute rule. A project can be created, come to life, and be completed by devoting just 15 minutes a day to it. Let's think about this. It takes you around 15 minutes to make and eat your breakfast, I would guess. It takes you slightly longer to make or buy and eat your lunch, and perhaps it takes slightly longer again to make or buy and eat your dinner. Taking breakfast as our example, in that 15 minutes, whilst you're preparing and eating your breakfast, I will bet that you're thinking about your day to come. Who will go to the supermarket? Who's going to pick up the kids from school? In what order will I respond to the client emails, or which piece of work am I going to complete first? Now, that's a lot of internal mind chatter in just that 15 minutes when you are feeding yourself. Hey, I'm a barrister. I know this internal mind chatter and I know it well. Too well. I know this internal mind chatter exhaustingly well, so well that at times the list of things would become overwhelming and a mild panic would set in. A mild panic setting in just looking at a list, never mind actually doing all the things on that list. But the good news is that all of this is avoidable. So much so that I try not to make those lists anymore, at least not too often. Time spent making internal mind chatter lists, time spent worrying about what is going to happen next, what's going to happen in the future, is time wasted. I mean, sure, plan your day, that makes life easier. Make plans for the future, it's good to have ambition, but don't fixate. And make that list of the day's tasks once and not over and over. Write a handwritten list or write a memo on your phone or leave yourself a voice note with your list of tasks. Doing that without procrastination, without worry about when and how, will take you no more than 5 minutes, I bet. Focus your mind on making that list and focus your mind such that the list is made so that you can leave it, put it aside, knowing it's there whenever you're ready to pick it up again. So, out of our 15 minutes, you have your list. It's there. You can look at it again when you're ready. And you have 10 minutes left. What are you going to do with your 10 minutes? Or maybe you already have your list and you have the full 15 minutes. Whether it's 10 or 15 minutes that you have, use it well. Use it wisely. I wrote my first radio show, parts of which I'll be using in an upcoming talk and seminar. A live talk delivered in person to a live audience requires a slightly different kind of text and a slightly different kind of delivery. The way I deliver talks in person is that I do my best to memorize the material, and I do that because it then leaves me free to really think about the topic I'm talking about. It allows me to go off script but remain on topic, knowing that the script or the copy is there in my head and sometimes in my hands. That's also how I prepare for court, and so far that has worked for me. Now, talks don't get memorized without work. If I have a 20-page talk and I spend 15 minutes each day whilst I'm making and eating my breakfast memorizing that talk, assuming it takes me about 15 minutes roughly to memorize a page, I have a talk in my head which is more or less ready to go in about 20 days. In the space of less than 3 weeks, I have a finished product. Of course there's room for refinement, room for improvement, but the bare bones are there, the foundation has been laid. Applying the 15-minute rule to a project, such as memorizing a talk, also has the benefit of removing time for procrastination. You are working under the pressure of time. When memorizing those 20 pages, it was under the pressure of time, the pressure of knowing that I had to get that one page committed to memory and that I had to do it in the space of 15 minutes. No compromise, no, oh, I'll pick up on this again later or tomorrow. No, oh, I'll take 30 minutes this evening and it'll be better then as I'll have more time. It'll be better then because I'll be more relaxed in the evening with the TV on in the background. No, tomorrow is too far away and later in the day, you'll be tired and that'll be the new excuse. Focus your mind in that 15 minutes over the breakfast process and who knows what you'll create. But I still don't have 15 minutes in my day to give my energy to this, you might be saying. Okay, so what's another time, and I would argue joy killer? What two things in this modern age do we as a species give our time over to, over and over, and then complain that we don't have enough time? Watching television and endlessly scrolling through social media on our phones or our laptops or whatever devices. By watching 15 minutes less TV a day, by being on social media for 15 fewer minutes each day, you'll be doing yourself the biggest favour. By reducing your time that is wasted and focusing on, say, a yoga or meditation practice or working on a project, you are not only doing something good for yourself, you are also valuing yourself by valuing your time. You see, I think that when we spend our time which is a precious commodity, on wasteful things, such as mindlessly scrolling on social media, when we are doing that, I think we are unconsciously or subliminally telling ourselves that our time is worthless, that our time lacks value, and it can be given over to something wasteful that adds little to no value in our lives. The brain then starts to latch onto this, and this telling ourselves that our time is worthless or valueless starts to become a deeper held belief. And the new habit of wasting time can settle in so quickly, quietly stealing precious moments from our lives, which, remember, are a miracle, by the way. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that we should all cancel our social media accounts or never pick up a device again, or that we should never watch a box set or a film again. No, I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is that by spending 15 minutes a day less scrolling and 15 minutes a day more doing something else, we have the capacity to increase our overall sense of well-being as well as increase our productivity. By following the 15-minute rule and by incorporating a new practice into your life or starting and finishing a new project, you are not only achieving that thing, you are increasing your view of your self-worth and your self-value. And once you've accomplished that project, or you suddenly find that you have a new and healthy, worthwhile habit or a practice, you're going to feel good about yourself. And who doesn't like feeling good about themselves? A New York Times article states, researchers found that participants who engaged in hobbies were 34% less stressed and 18% less sad during these activities, as well as for some time after. Whilst those numbers might not sound like much, if you're starting from, say, being 100% stressed, or even 90% stressed, and you can drop that to being 34% less stressed, then you're already winning. By slowing down and de-stressing, you are also stopping yourself from experiencing workplace burnout. Burnout is sufficiently serious and sufficiently real that the World Health Organization has added it in its 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases as an occupational phenomenon. This came into effect in January of this year, 2022. The Harvard Business Review, in a 2019 article, quotes a survey where 7,500 full-time employees were surveyed. Of those, 23% reported feeling burned out at work very often or always, while 63% said they experienced it sometimes. The Harvard Business Review goes on to talk about the WHO adding burnout to its list of diseases, stating, it refers specifically to phenomena in the occupational context, a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been managed successfully. The article goes on to say that the WHO has identified 3 dimensions that make up burnout. The first of these is feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion. The second sign is increased mental distance from one's job or feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job. And the third characteristic, reduced professional efficacy. The article goes on to note that there are certain types of professions that pose a higher risk of burnout. The first of those is more of an attitude to your profession than the profession itself. As cited in the Harvard Business Review, the Mayo Clinic says that the first of these factors is where you identify so strongly with work that you lack balance between your work life and your personal life. The second of these factors is where you work in a helping profession, for example, a caregiving profession such as being a nurse or a doctor. Another situation that can give rise to burnout is the FaceTime culture that I think as a society, certainly here in the West, we don't even question anymore. The Harvard Business Review article cites a study undertaken by Amy Blankson, who is the founder and CEO of Positive Digital Culture, who found that more than 50% of US employees feel like they have to check their email after 11 p.m. to keep up with work. As a result, burnout is on the rise and engagement is decreasing. What's encouraging, though, is that the WHO's website, in its definition on burnout, concludes by saying the World Health Organization is about to embark on the development of evidence-based guidelines on mental health well-being in the workplace. Depending on what that work is, it truly has the potential to be the start of something really meaningful in helping us all to manage our stress, and in particular our workplace stress. I hope that this in turn helps us all as a society to pay attention to mental health and well-being in the workplace. To give you some personal experiences into this burnout phenomenon, I spent 8 years as a self-employed practicing barrister in England. My very first real job was 6 weeks into practice, just 6 weeks in. I was 24 years old. I got booked for a 5-day trial. A 5-day trial that was centred around a completely new piece of legislation that had just been enacted in the UK. Another barrister in my then chambers was the expert in this area of law where the new regulations had just come in, and even he was still getting his head around them. So off I went to court, having had the opportunity to spend 3 days to wrap my head around the facts, the law, the cross-examination of about 3 witnesses, plus the evidence in chief of my own witness. I met my client. My client had given their entire life to the situation we were dealing with in court that week. The pressure was on. A few things went well and it went my way and we won the case. And not only did we win the case, we also got a damages award much higher than any of us thought we could get. But that wasn't the last time I was in that kind of pressure cooker scenario. That instruction that was last minute, sometimes the night before, that case that I felt woefully underprepared for, but somehow, due to the stress I put myself under, each and every time I managed to pull it out the bag. So what did 8 years of that brutal, brutal life, that unhealthy lifestyle do to me? What it did to my mind and body was that I ended up doing all the high stress related things. Sometimes in the days or the night before what I considered a really stressful hearing to be taking place, I would chain smoke in secret. I would sneak down to the basement of chambers, sneak out through the fire door and hide under the stairwell and shamefully puff away, hoping that nobody saw me, feeling that those cigarettes were somehow helping me to calm down. They weren't. They were only making me feel more stressed, more fretful, more agitated. And in addition, I was harming my physical health. I had sleepless nights. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with a racing heartbeat, worrying about how the case was going to go, worrying about whether I'd worked out all the best points in the arguments, worrying about what I might have missed. I would get regular and inexplicable headaches, sometimes blinding headaches, seemingly out of nowhere. And each time this happened, I would just pop a pill or two and take a couple of painkillers. Looking back now, I shudder to think how many painkillers I popped and how many chemicals were swarming around my body from those anti-inflammatories. And then, when I had time off, I would go out for dinner with friends, say on a Friday night. I'd go out with the best of intentions to relax and spend time with my friends. I'd meet them, we'd have a glass of wine and we'd start to chat. And by the end of the starter, the main course if I was lucky, I would fall asleep at the dinner table, in public, with my friends. Falling asleep at 8 p.m. in a public restaurant due to exhaustion, due to stress, was not in any way attractive, healthy, or sustainable. Looking back, I was doing all the wrong things. What I was doing wrong was that I was not managing my stress. I was not taking healthy and constructive options to deal with the stress and the workload. I was not following the 15-minute rule, or any rule for that matter. By following the 15-minute rule, you are wiring or rewiring your brain to believe, to truly believe that your time is of value, that what you do is of value, that what you create is of value. And by valuing yourself and your time, not only will you start to feel better about yourself and about your life, you are also going to start experiencing more joy in your life. Sadhguru stated in a television interview he did in 2019 with Tom Bilyeu, there is substantial scientific and medical evidence to show that only when you're in a pleasant state of experience, your brain and your body work at their best. When you are experiencing joy, you are in what is now fashionable to call a state of flow. But by being in that state, you are able to get things done, to focus on tasks with ease and with less stress. One of the ways in which we can get to that pleasant state of experience, that state of experiencing joy, is by being grateful. By being grateful for what we have instead of focusing on what we don't have enables us to experience, to feel joy. When was the last time you met someone who was joyful and who wasn't grateful for what they have? When have you met someone who's moaning about their life but who's also joyful at the same time? I think it's actually impossible to be grateful and to be miserable at the same time. I want you to try. See if you're able to be grateful for something. Just think of something simple. And in the context of that gratitude, see if you can also be miserable. Another perspective on stress is that stress can actually act as a fuel. Tony Robbins deals with this issue of stress really well in one of his talks. He makes the point that in business, it is our thoughts that create our stress. Of course, that doesn't only apply to business. Our perception of what is going on versus what is actually objectively going on are quite often not the same thing. How we perceive a situation to be is how the situation is. One of the examples that Tony Robbins gives is how the hiring of employees can pose a stressful situation, or it can pose a freeing situation. The stress perspective of being a hirer may be, I won't be able to attract the right employee, or the whole situation of having to go through this hiring process is so time-consuming and expensive and it may all come to nothing. Or, how about this perspective? How about this thought? by hiring people, I will have more free time. By hiring people, I will be able to delegate some of my tasks. So, by changing our perspective of a given situation, we take some of the pressure off ourselves. Tony Robbins then goes on to pose the question, what would happen? What would you feel if you didn't have the stressful thoughts surrounding, for example, the hiring of people? The answer? What you would have is freedom. Complete freedom. Freedom from the shackles of the limiting and stressing thoughts of the situation. Whilst 15 minutes a day is unlikely to get you the extra quality time that you may want to spend, for example, with your family, if you do start to have a daily 15-minute meditation practice or some other practice where you are able to slow down and let things flow a bit more, you will slowly be slowing down and benefiting your parasympathetic nervous system. And by calming down your PNS, you'll start to find yourself relaxing into life a little bit more, relaxing into spending that quality time with the people you care about. And crucially, you will start being present when you are with the people you love or when you're undertaking an activity that's important to you that gives you fulfillment. And being present is so important. There's actually almost no point in doing something if all the while you're doing that thing, you're in fact in your mind somewhere else, thinking about something else. By slowing down, by calming the PNS in our bodies, we are in a better position to focus on the task or event at hand, better able to be present. And if you do have more than 15 minutes, if you have an hour or so, and you're keen to explore meditation or yoga practices further, we have excellent resources here on Ireland. To name just a few, there's One Heart Yoga, Bodyworks, Bliss Yoga. And of course, I absolutely do not want to forget the Buddha Medicine Songs group. These wonderful souls sing and play beautiful mantra melodies and music, whilst you in the audience can sit and soak it all in. You can join in with the mantra singing or stay completely silent. It's entirely up to you. The group meets every Thursday evening at 7 o'clock in the evening inside Bodyworks for an hour. Attendance is by donation, which makes it even more worthwhile to attend as the funds raised are donated to a local charity with a different one being picked every month. Now, before I round off, if any of the issues I have talked about today are making any of you, my listeners, feel anxious, or if there's something else going on for you right now that is causing you some form of anxiety, depression, distress, please reach out to a friend for a chat or reach out to a professional. And here are the contact details again for anyone who would like to reach out to talk to someone professionally. Infinite Mind Care is on 926-0882, and the Alex Panton Foundation, which provides assistance for those up to the age of 30, may be found at alexpantonfoundation.ky. Loud Silent Voices is also a great tool, and they're on 922-3847 and info@lsv.support. Please do tune in again next week at 2 p.m. on Thursday for my next show on Bobo FM 89.1. My wonderful audience, thank you so much for listening to my show, Shuvra Deb with you. Bye for now. Thank you all so much for tuning in and for listening to Shuvra Deb with you. And please do tune in every Thursday at 2 p.m. on Bobo FM 89.1 for more topics related to and relevant to mental health. If any of you would like to reach out to me directly about any of the issues I've discussed, please do email me at shuvradeb82@gmail.com. That's spelt SHUVRADEB, the numbers 82 @gmail.com. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening.